Hey, it's PVSB with the CPG Guys. You know, we talk a lot about this on the show. For CPG marketers today, it's not just about reaching consumers. It's about connecting with them meaningfully at every touch point. Here's the reality. Shopping isn't just an event anymore. It's woven into daily life. And with consumers spending over 90 minutes streaming content daily, entertainment has become central to the shopping journey. Amazon Ads unifies commerce, entertainment, and open internet to reach 86% of U.S. households, turning trillions of consumer signals into powerful results, both on and beyond Amazon. So visit advertising.amazon.com to learn more.
I'm Nik Modi from RBC Capital Markets, Managing Director and Head of the Consumer Team. You're listening to the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast, set at the intersection of commerce and tech. Your hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in a digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I am your jolly host, PVSB. And when I'm not doing that, I lead industry and client engagement at Flywheel, the commerce acceleration division of Omnicom, which is now the world's largest advertising holding company. Wow, that's a lot to say. It is our year-end special, and I can't do this without my ride or die. He's my best friend, patriarch of the Raj family media empire, parent to Ria and Lara Raj, a husband to Kavita, who runs the Lights Camera Conversation podcast, and the only male resident of a household with 7 other females. Of course, I'm talking about Papa Raj himself, the man known as Sri. Sri, how you doing, man? You ready for your trip over to India and to the Maldives? What's going on?
Leaving in less than 24 hours. I don't have a bag packed. I got too much going on between CPG Guys, Think Blue, year-end stuff. You know, everyone wants to pay us early now. Suddenly everybody decided they want to pay us with this year's budget.
Yeah, I know. Money's coming our way. It's a high-grade problem, right?
I have 12 hours to get a lot accomplished. In between, I decided that today is the day to service the 3 ACs in the house. Don't ask me why.
What are you thinking, Sri? And don't forget, now you have to pack your CPG Guys branded suitcase for Las Vegas because you're literally coming off the plane and going to another gate in LAX on your trip back and heading right out to CES.
2 hours, 47 minutes.
I am going
Change terminals.
When I land in LA on Friday for my vacation, I'm going to stop by your house, pick up the suitcase. If the torrential flooding has caused a backup in your drain, I'm going to snake your outdoor drains. And then I'm going to bring your luggage back with me to Connecticut and take it to Las Vegas. So you want to know the inner workings of the CPG Guys? That's the glamorous lifestyle we live. That's right. Snaking each other's drains and carrying luggage for each other. That's how we roll.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous indeed. But I want to use Papa Raj, and I want to call out our guest today for being gracious enough to come see my older daughter live in New York City. We'll ask him about how that experience was. He brought his entire family, which was pretty awesome.
I was there, and it was great to see them. It was so much fun to see Ria in concert after having seen Lara and Cat's Eye. But Sri, it's our year-end summary, and who better to look at what happened in 2025 than one of our favorite guests who we met with at the beginning of the year at CAGNY and had a lot of predictions about where this industry was going. So it'll be great to check in with him.
We met him a long time ago.
Well, we met with him at CAGNY.
Oh, yes, yeah. And I'm hoping we'll do it again in 2026.
But before I get to him, I'll just say to everybody, if you're not following us on your favorite podcast platform, please do, Apple, Spotify, whatever. And if while you're there, make sure you give us a rating. It helps make our podcast more findable by industry contemporaries. And we look forward to seeing you. We've got a heck of a first quarter. We're at CES, NRF, FMI, every acronym we can come up with. We're there. We're probably there. We'll be at Shop Talk this year. We're going out to SOCOM Live in Venice Beach. We're going to be at E-Tail Palm Springs. I don't know where we are. I was looking at my calendar, Sri, and I was Xing out the dates that I'm away. Do you know there are more X'd out dates in January and February than there are non-X'd out dates? We are traveling bandits.
All I'm trying to do is pack a bag and get out in the next 15, 18
Good
hours.
luck.
Beyond
Good
that,
luck.
I can't even think.
Good luck. All right, so let's get to it. Our guest today, he's familiar to this podcast. He leads capital markets analysts at RBC Capital. Why I'm wearing my Team Canada hockey jersey today. Those of you who don't know,
nice.
RBC stands for Royal Bank of Canada. It's one of the largest banks in the world, and he is one of the foremost analysts in the consumer staples area. He needs no introduction, but I'll still do it anyhow. Please join Sri and me in welcoming our dear friend, Nik Modi. Nik, how you doing, man?
I am excellent. It was a tough year. We try to stay on top of things, and 2026, it's going to be, I think, equally as tough, but I think there's a lot going on, so a lot to talk about.
Well, I know that we're the only thing standing between you and visiting your parents down in Florida, so we're going to make efficient use of your time. So thank you for joining us.
You make efficient use of the time. I'm going to dig my heels in. So he started with, it's been a tough year, and you think we can just walk away from that?
No, I want to get to that. So we spoke back in February. We were down in Orlando at CAGNY, the Consumer Analyst Group in New York conference. And you had some pretty blunt words. You wrote some statements. You were talking about the fact that so many of the staple companies had not done a reset. They were facing incredible volume pressures. They'd taken price dramatically over the pandemic, and they were still chasing the quarterly short-term EBITDA and dividend numbers. And the damage that they were doing, according to you, in terms of their ability to invest in advertising and innovation was not sustainable. So I guess my first question is, looking back at what you recommended that they do at CAGNY, how's that going for most of the companies you're tracking?
More, I think, started to follow that line of thinking, right? Numbers did come down since CAGNY quite dramatically for some, not all. Like I'll just mention, General Mills was one of the companies that did do that. And we're actually starting to see now a recovery in their volume as a result, right? So look, this is not rocket science. This is just about making, I think, the right decision for the long term. And sometimes I think that obviously there's a lot of pressure on many of these management teams to deliver consistently. But when we're in these kind of volatile times, you kind of have to change the playbook a little bit. And that requires courage, right? That requires taking bold steps and actions. And some companies have done it. Others have not. They're going to have to pay the piper in 2026. And so, we'll just have to see. But I think what we've seen so far is that those that have made those tough choices are starting to see the benefits from a demand standpoint.
Yeah, Nik, I would agree with you. I would say that you mentioned General Mills. I think they made the change. There's also some indication that their stock price may be still a little overvalued. I saw one of the other analysts give them a sell rating of recent. Why would you see that if they made that decision that they're going to take a step back, they're going to reset what their expectations are, and they can invest in things, if they're still not completely able to turn around, convince the analyst community that they're on a trajectory for growth, what's the alternative? I mean, are some of these companies, I guess, ripe for the things that we're seeing in the industry, Kraft Heinz splitting up? Are they going to, I look at General Mills, right, as an example, because they've been selling off some brands over the last couple of years. They sold Hamburger Helper to Eagle Family. They divested their yogurt business to Lactalis. I mean, are some of them just big enough and challenged enough that they're pretty much just waiting for someone to buy them out and break them up? What's going on here?
Yeah, I don't think that, General Mills has basically been doing it to themselves when you think about some of these divestitures you just mentioned, Peter, and then acquiring, things in the pet space, right? So they've kind of portfolio reshaped themselves. So I don't think they need someone externally to come in and do that. Look, I think this whole separating and all this stuff, I don't know. I think these businesses can grow without that happening. But you need the funds to do it, right? And so what they did is they said, we're cutting our earnings. They cut price, which is exactly what they needed to do. It's what the entire packaged food industry needs to do, okay? We're seeing the volume benefits. I mean, when you see the Pillsbury business start growing, you got to take a step back and start questioning the prevailing logic that you can't grow some of these brands. What do? They got the price points right under price cliffs. They improved the product quality and efficacy, right? Baked higher. And they turned the Pillsbury Doughboy into an influencer. That's the trifecta right there, right? And so there's a formula here, but these companies just have to go find it and they have to find the talent to go execute it. And so that's at least the way I see it, right?
Nik, I got to ask you a question since you actually referred to the Piper back there. Was that a reference to the famous Led Zeppelin song, and it's whispered that soon if we all call the tune, then the Piper will lead us to reason, and a new day will dawn for those who stand long. So I do want to ask you, when you kind of put out that statement earlier in the year about bravery and courage, and that report that you had put out to CEOs, how many do you think, I'm not asking for an exact number here, but order of magnitude, do you think the industry understood what you were emphasizing in terms of resetting?
I do. I think it took maybe 12 months longer than it should have, right? Because, we were seeing pockets of weakness emerge, going back actually 18 months to 2 years. And the thing is, like, we're living in two economies, right? We're living in this very bifurcated K-shaped world where if you look at all the economic data, everything is like fine, but it's a very small percentage of consumers and individuals that are driving that growth. Whereas you have the CPG industry, which is over indexed to lower and middle income consumers. And because you're buying these products so frequently, the price sensitivities are higher. So the affordability issue is a lot greater than you would find in other parts of the economy, like taking a vacation, right? And so I do think that, they all understand the situation. Numbers have come down pretty broadly. I don't think they've come down enough for certain companies. That I think will happen over the next 6 to 12 months. But the world is changing around them. So these are moving targets. And so even though if you reset, you might be resetting to the realities of 2025, not the realities of 2026, where now all of a sudden, if you're defaulting on your student loan, you're going to have money taken out of your paycheck as of January 7th. Or healthcare premiums are going to go up if we don't get some Obamacare or whatever, Affordable Act extended subsidies. The ICE situation is going to continue to rage on in different parts of the country. And so we have all this stuff going on. And so the goalposts are moving. And so then you're going to have to ask yourself the question in 2026, did we cut enough?
So Nik.
So hold on, Peter. I want to jump into, did we cut enough? Is it purely a EPS, cut the forecast, or are you talking more in terms of divestiture, of don't hold on to parts of the portfolio that don't make sense in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I would argue that the global economy is becoming much more local, right? So think about it. All these small brands that these companies are selling, is there a role for them to play in this more what I call economy, right? This global local where people want to buy local, right? This is the embodiment of craft beer, but then the craft brewers mistook zip code loyalty for brand equity, right? But the reality is people want to buy things that are local all over the world. And these companies have a lot of brands that they're not focused on, that if they maybe take different business models, maybe partnering with more influencers with some of these brands at the local level, there might be a place for them, right? So this whole simplification of the portfolio may actually be counterproductive if you really think about where the world is going, right? So answer on the portfolio construction, I do think more needs to be done on bifurcating price points. I don't think that the industry is well positioned from that standpoint because the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And I think portfolio choices are going to have to be bifurcated, right? Mm-hmm. Really premium stuff with good margins, with a lot of functional benefits. And at the very low end, your bare basic stuff that you can just, because you don't want to lose household penetration. We saw what happened during post-COVID. When you start losing household penetration after you gained it, boy, that's painful, right? So, and then the last piece of this, Shri, about earnings, right? Why am I saying cut? These stocks, and this is the angle I'm coming from, value creation is built off of consistency, not the magnitude of growth. No investor, big institutional investor, is looking to buy any of these CPG stocks for growth. If they want growth, they can buy Tesla or Nvidia or some other industry. What they really want is consistency, insurance, solid dividend growth, and not have to worry. They can go to bed at night knowing grandma's money is safe. And I think that the problem with this industry the last, I would call it 5+ years, has been the lack of consistency because they're not investing in the capabilities and because they're not keeping their price points sharp. That's why I keep on hearkening back to you must bring your numbers down so you can create that consistency, right? Because the whole value creation formula has changed, I believe, right? You got to chase consistency, and allocating capital for consistency is very different than allocating capital for growth.
Brilliant. So, Nik, the reason people listen to this podcast is they love when we spill the tea. So let's get it.
Whoa. The reason they listen to this podcast is because we have the perfect podcast faces.
Well, that is true. That is true. We have faces built for podcasting, but let's talk hookups and breakups, because that's what we're all interested in. So a couple of years ago, we had Kellogg's broke up. They went and turned to WK Kellogg and then Kellanova, and then lo and behold, this year they're hooking up with no people. Suddenly, you got Mars acquiring Kellanova, and Ferrero buys WK Kellogg at the same time. Kraft Heinz. They got together, they're breaking up. But the one I want to hear from you on is Kimberly-Clark's announcement that they're looking to acquire a Kenvue. Right? That's a really interesting one. I have my thoughts on why they're doing it. I would love to hear from you thoughts on why a paper manufacturer would start buying, OTC and personal care products.
Yeah.
What's the deal there?
Yeah. So this is, we actually wrote that this would be a potential combination earlier this year, I think around May. And the reason why we felt like this would be a probability is because if you think about where the world is going, and I got to give Mike Hsu credit. I mean, he, the CEO of Kimberly-Clark, I think he's got vision. Like I will give him that due. I mean, he's got some real vision, and the vision is the population is aging. We're all looking to be more proactive about our healthcare. We might look at Kimberly-Clark and they say they sell paper products, but really they are part of the healthcare ecosystem, right? When you think about diapers, or when you think about feminine care products, or when you think about even incontinence products, right? And so to bring in Kenvue, skincare, well, guess what? Last time I checked, diapers touch the skin quite a bit, right? So do incontinence products, right? And so, the reality for me is I think they're creating a consumer health platform of the future, right? And, when you think about innovation, like, guys, think about the disruptive innovation. If you can take science and turn a tampon into a uterine diagnostic device for women that they can test their uterine health every month around their period. This is game-changing stuff. And this is not stuff that these guys are not aware of, right? And so I just think that there's a lot of interesting, disruptive innovation that can solve problems. And that's really what innovation is meant to be. It's not a new flavor. It's solving problems. And we got a lot of problems when we come to personal care and health, right?
Nick, does this make the combination?
The CPG guys ain't one.
Yeah. Does this make them more of a formidable competitor to a certain Cincinnati, Ohio-based company that has a closer match in terms of portfolio coverage now? Yeah,
I mean, I think obviously there's going to be some disruption in the interim, right? I don't think we can be naive and not acknowledge that. But yes, I think long term, right? Again, guys, this is the whole thing. This industry, CPG in general, I think we calculated there are like 4 companies that have actually created consistent returns over a 25-year period above their cost of capital. That's about 7% ex dividends. Okay. 4 companies. That's 10% of my coverage effectively. Right. And so this is where bold and courageous decisions need to be made. And I think Kimberly-Clark and Kenvue is one of those bold, courageous decisions. Long term, I think they will be a much more formidable competitor to P&G. And quite frankly, I think it'll be a great thing for both because they're both very innovation minded. And so I think it's going to be able to create a lot of markets together. I mean, there's a massive high-end diaper market in China, but there's not one here in the US. Why? Procter has a technology, but they're like, why would we invest and put all these high price point products into the market if our competition is not going to follow? Then we have these massive price gaps, right? And so now you have a very innovation-minded Kimberly, and they're going to play ball in that market. And all of a sudden, we're going to start seeing this market develop, and it's going to create a lot of new revenue.
So I want to go to the top of this episode when you started by saying it's been a tough year. Tell us why it's been a tough year.
Well, I think, first of all, there's like 40% of my coverage that's down over 30%. I call it the 30% club.
And when you say down, you're purely referring to the end of day stock price yesterday.
Yeah, year to date. Right, exactly. So I've covered this industry 25 years. I mean, that's a long time. I've never seen it this bad. Like we've had tough times in this industry, right? Nothing has been this bad, right? From a stock price performance.
Nick, what are we not asking you that we should on this podcast? I mean, these are 2 practitioners here in front of you that come from deep in retail and CPG, which makes this podcast very unique compared to 2 interviewers having a conversation with you. What are we missing here? The number you gave is no joke, like you said. Yeah. You said decades you haven't seen this.
Yeah. Listen, we need to change the way business models operate, processes work. I mean, this industry needs to change. And this is why, like, I keep on going back to the earnings, right? Stop chasing the numbers until you are future fit. That's the issue here, is that these are, I call it hamster on a wheel, right? They're just running around trying to hit these quarterly numbers. And then the issues that are presented to them, they can't really address in a structural, sustainable way. And so, like, let me just take a few examples, right? Supply chain, okay? We still have, legacy supply chains, right? Some companies have overcapacity. Others in more faster growing markets might have, not enough capacity. Well, there's got to be an opportunity to co-op capacity across the industry, right? I know there's certain retailers that are thinking about a lot of that, right? And so, like, again, business models are changing and adjusting. And I don't know if these companies are keeping up at that pace, right? AI, another great thing. It's very basic what's being used. Like we were talking about agentic AI at the beginning of the year, right? I was calling it the digital butler. Now we're starting to hear about it because all of a sudden all the retailers are starting to implement agentic AI into their processes. Now everyone is scrambling. This is my point, is let's stop scrambling. Let's start being ahead, right? If I can see it, of course, the companies I follow are much smarter than me. They must see it. I'm just an analyst, right? So that's my point, is that if you're aware that things are shifting, then you need to free up the resources to shift accordingly. But that's not what's happening, and that's what's causing this problem. This problem, by the way, that we're having this year, on the worst year I've seen in stock price performance, didn't start this year. It started 10 years ago.
Nik, you talk about the introduction of agentic commerce, and I look at the retail marketplaces that are out there. They're trying to get a handle on it. Of course, they're all to a large degree constrained by their typical margins. It's been said for years that grocery operates on a net 2% margin. I know from Sri knows from his time that if you were going to put in new fixtures in a physical shelf, you would allocate the cost of that to all your vendors, and that's how you would pay for it. So the question becomes, if you're a manufacturer and you know that your product sells through these marketplaces, what's the recommendation for manufacturers to invest to make sure that their marketplaces have an opportunity to succeed? What do they need to bring to the table to better collaborate with Amazon, better collaborate with Kroger, better collaborate with Walmart, that's going to ensure that their brands succeed? Because at the same time, they're also facing a world where these collaboration partners are also their competitors as they continue to launch more and more premium private label brands that are eating away at their share. What are brands to do in this world of big digital commerce and competitive threats from the retailers creating brands?
I'm a simple-minded person. Most of the CEOs listening to this podcast will probably agree with you. Okay. Product efficacy. It's that simple. It's what these companies do anyway. Innovation. If you have the product that tastes better, smells better, makes you feel better, whatever, works better, then you are going to get recommended online, and that's going to drive a lot of these engines, right? Because let's face the
secret.
facts.
That's the secret power, right?
That's the secret power.
It's what drives Amazon. They never talk about it in their analyst calls, but everybody knows that they have one of the richest assets possible in user-generated content. There's a lot of trust that's generated when you pull up a product and you see it's got an average 4.5 star rating and there are 10,000 reviews behind it. That gets you to say, I'm good with that.
I want to dive into that comment a little bit more. In the past world, pre-COVID, 20 years ago, whatever, companies were getting rewarded for their partnership with Walmart and the growth they're bringing vanilla across the US. How important is e-commerce and Amazon in your equation when you look at a company's potential these days?
Yeah, it's incredibly important because a lot of consumers are migrating there. And as we age, right, we're going to be looking for more convenient solutions. And guess what? Buying stuff online is pretty convenient, especially if they can get it to you in 30 minutes, right? I mean, think about what's happening now with delivery times, right? There's like a time elasticity equation now as well, right? Like, oh, I can get it right away, right? So it's incredibly important. Now, here's the thing. We wrote our Imagine piece, which really, what the whole Imagine initiative is really thinking about the next 5 years, because we know that a lot of these boards are so busy trying to put out the fires of today that maybe they don't think about what's coming around the corner. So we did the work for them. That's the whole point of the Imagine initiative. And so when you think about the way the world is moving, there's going to be a lot of synthetic things, synthetic shoppers, agentic AI, synthetic materials that go into cost of goods, right? Synthetic influencers and marketers, which is going to put a real premium on authenticity and real, right? So the brick and mortar environment we might think is losing luster, but the reality is because of the rise of synthetic, the brick and mortar environment is actually going to become even more important because it's going to be the only place where you can find authenticity and real, right? And so it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, again, today versus 5 years from now, right? So I think the e-commerce and digital lens is incredibly important, but you can't forget about the brick and mortar piece.
You refer to a word, Imagine. Can you tell us more about what Imagine was about?
Yeah, Imagine, we started the initiative in 2018, and basically it's a 6-month program that I spearhead at RBC, where we use all of our analysts across every industry. The problem with just being in consumer is that we just talk about what's in consumer, but what about what's happening in biotech and what's happening in financial services and what's happening in the industrial world? There's so much lateral perspective that we miss because we're not experts in those areas. So the whole Imagine initiative is meant to have this lateral framework so we can all think off of the same prongs, right? And so we have a bunch of themes, right? And so it's a holistic framework to understand what the world is going to basically look like in the year 2030 and what kind of capabilities and core competencies companies will need to thrive and survive. So that's the whole kind of picture of Imagine. So we're going on a roadshow in 2026. We'll be presenting to a lot of boards, a lot of management teams in terms of our specific takes on that framework put on the lens of that particular company or that particular category.
Nick, my question is around alignment of goals. And all too often, the CEO, the CFO, they're all rewarded based upon the stock price, the earnings per share, the dividend. And too often, the rest of the leadership organization is not. They're on a bonus plan. And do you think that that has caused some problems in terms of driving growth, that the entire leadership organization isn't essentially incentivized as directly as it should, as I guess in a unified way, that sometimes they run counter to each other and that causes some disharmony? Like where do we stand right now from your perspective in terms of alignment of rewarding systems that ensures that the outcomes you're seeking actually occur?
Yeah.
And Nick, I want to piggyback on that one, right? So the incentive system was created to grow the company, the numbers, numeric function. We're in a little bit of a formula now where growth has dried up in the last 2.5 odd years. Is there a room or window in your mind as an analyst to reset some of these metrics to include consumer penetration, category reshaping, focus on share versus the top line and things of that nature, and pure volume versus purely profit? I'm just curious what's on your mind.
Yeah, I think the answer is to Peter, yes, I do think that there's some lack of harmony in the incentive structures across the entire organizational structure, right? From the new hires all the way up to the CEO. But then also when you think about the agency partners, the retailers, right? Like there's a bigger ecosystem here that we have to think about. And so, yeah, I do think that there's probably some innovation that can be done in this area, right? To kind of align, realign, reassess the metrics and what success really means. Now, to your point, Shri, about like getting back to volume focus or market share, there were times where that was the focus. And it led to bad behaviors, right? It led to price cuts, and it led to, because if you're just focused on market share and volume growth, you can get that really easily if you just drop the price, right? So we have to be careful in terms of what metrics we need to craft. But I think household penetration is a great thing. Here's the other thing, and I think this is a bigger part of why I think these companies have struggled. Brand equity is literally getting redefined while we're speaking on this podcast, right? And what I mean by that is cultural relevance is now probably the single biggest thing for brand equity. Cultural relevance. And I think online and digital and TikTok, I mean, Shri, you're sitting in the perfect spot with Cat's Eye, right? You can see the cultural relevance, K-pop, and what that meant for this group, right? And their popularity and how, being artist of the year on TikTok, I mean, that's massive, right? And so I think that's something that these companies are maybe missing, because the old ways of marketing are still being used, right? Whereas the new ways of marketing are actually now driving this cultural relevance, right? I just spoke on another podcast for the beer industry, and I said, everyone focuses on premise, right? brands are built on premise in the bars. I go, yes, that's true. But on premise has now been split into two pieces, the bar, the club, but online. You don't have split the G without both, right? And for those that you don't know, split the G is basically what consumers are doing with Guinness. In the Guinness glass, they're trying to sip their first sip to get the G, the line of the beer right in the middle of the G. And Guinness is driving really strong growth in a market that's not growing at all. In fact, a market that is having its worst year in a long time. So you need these both halves to work, right? And I think that's what these companies have to start figuring out. And listen, maybe there needs to be a 24-year-old deputy CMO that's part of the management team. Maybe that's a solution, right?
And Nick, are you telling me that the CPG guys are best served by having their logo put on beer glasses in bars and getting people to level up to, is that what you're telling us?
I'm thinking maybe split the CPG. Yeah.
Split the CPG, Shri. What do you think about that? Right down
CPG,
the middle.
Don't split the guys.
No guys, just the CPG.
But Nick, wait. You go ahead, Peter.
No, you go, Shri. You do a follow-up because I'm taking it I've got a very poignant question.
You said something pretty profound there. Put the 35-year-old, 25-year-old, whatever, cultural CMO. How's that message resonating with leadership? Because you hang out with the CEOs and CFOs. When you tell them that, do they even understand what you're saying, leave alone take action?
I think they understand.
Let me tell you why I ask you this question. The blueprint for CPG leadership, especially warehouse businesses, which is 80% of everything that's sold in retail, is get an Ivy League MBA and you stick to the blueprint of the 4 Ps from Philip Kotler 5104 in MBA class, 1985 book, right? So, and then it's really falling into the script. And I've experienced this at some of the world's largest market cap companies, PepsiCo, J&J, Revlon, General Mills, etc. When you say this, it's got to be a little bit of a get under the skin and got to annoy them, because even though they may understand what you're saying, they're probably incapacitated to act and do it for a variety of reasons, including the HR policies and what. I'm just curious, what happens?
Yeah. I don't get a lot of pushback. They're like, oh, interesting. Obviously we don't see it happen. But, the problem is they're like, well, why do we need, a younger person when we could just do consumer insights, right? And that's the problem, is that the consumer insights are also built off of old legacy systems. I mean, here's an interesting thing, right? Like, I'm going to be keynoting the CMA, the Category Management Association's convention in February. And I think about this whole notion of category management, right? Which is important, right? But that's also evolving because consumers aren't buying based on categories anymore. They're buying based on occasion and micro occasion. And so the entire kind of operating model of how we make choices on where to allocate capital and where to focus our attention is not the way it's not harmonized with the way consumers actually wake up and behave. Mm-hmm. Right. And so again, this gets down to consumer centricity, right? The companies say they're consumer centric, but really they're stakeholder centric, and they need to get consumer centric again. And maybe that requires a really bold rethink of the organizational structure. And I have ideas that we can talk about, but I think if you reorganize the corporate infrastructure to be more consumer centric, and that means those frontline people that have very little say in how choices and capital are allocated, maybe they need to become a more important part of the decision-making matrix.
Nick, as we record this, we're less than 60 days out from CAGNY, the Consumer Analyst Group of New York event that happens down in Orlando. If they haven't already started, they're probably going to do it right after the holidays, putting their teams together to figure out what exactly they're going to present in front of this community of analysts and financial professionals. If you're going to give them advice, what should they do? What should they be talking about this year? What should be the theme? What should be the approach? And what should they not do? Like, what are the yes and what are the no's in prepping for this big industry event that's coming up?
Okay, here's the no's. I'll start there. Don't get up there and try to put on a good show like everything is great, because we know it's not, right? Now, some companies, they're anomalies, like Monster, right? Like, that's an anomaly, right? But most companies are challenged. I personally, what I would encourage all these companies to think about is getting up in front of all those investors, say, guys, the world has changed, okay? And some of our legacy processes doesn't fit anymore. And so we're making these changes because we recognize that we have to get back to a path of consistency. And then And then you can get into the capabilities that you're building to do that, right? Whether it be, hey, we actually have some breakthrough innovation. These are not just flavor extensions. These are real disruptive innovations. Or, hey, we're thinking about portfolio reshaping, not only from a brand and category standpoint, but also from a price point standpoint. We recognize we can't just premiumize everything, right? Like, again, to me, the messages are pretty simple. The question is, will they do it? Because in order to do those, make those messages, you're going to have to acknowledge that you have challenges. And, the whole thing about CAGNY is everyone gets up there and like, hey, look what we're doing. And, like, I just have to be honest. Like, I speak to the audience. I see what they're seeing. I talk to them after, and the messages don't hit.
Nick, when it comes to AI, hold on, Sri. When it comes to AI specifically, what should they and should they not do at CAGNY?
Well, I mean, AI is such a weird thing, right? Because now we talk about it like it's some separate thing, but really it's part of the organizational structure and every capability, right? Yep. And so what I would do is, like, how are they using AI to personalize messaging? Or how are they using AI in R&D and creating new molecules? Or using synthetic focus groups to get early reads so they can launch products at 1/10 the cost at what they're doing now, like what we see in Korea, right? In Korea, they can launch a product with $10,000 and it could be successful, right? So like how are they using these? And also from an agentic commerce standpoint, how are they going to make sure that their brand is in the decision tree, right? Or the basket?
Peter, should I be moving to Korea and just get sucked into the K-pop world and that's where I belong? $10,000 you can launch a brand.
You're already Papa Raj. They'll embrace you, Shri. I'm surprised they haven't already given you a South Korean passport.
But Nick, CAGNY, 60 days away.
Yep.
Tell me just one thing that excites you and you're looking forward to, other than, of course, the networking and meeting people.
Well, I always get a kick out of people fighting over the Hershey and the
Mondelez table. It's the Mondelez table.
By the way, these are all the same people that say obesity is a risk for these companies. They're fighting to get their candy.
Okay,
most of them don't realize they can buy all that stuff on Instacart, right? They don't need to bring it home on the corporate jet.
Do you know two adults 6 feet 2 inches or taller who will be standing at that table and making a beeline 20 minutes before the presentation ends?
I want that Toblerone egg, Shri. I want the Toblerone egg.
Toblerone egg. And this year I'm going to help him make sure he has enough for Nadia.
Nice.
But yeah, seriously.
What am I looking forward to?
Thing you're really looking forward to or expecting from the industry?
I really would like to hear a message of, get it, we understand, here's what we're doing. That's it. That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted, is for these amazing companies with these amazing brands to just say, hey, the world is moving and we got to move. And this is what we're doing, and we're getting ahead of it. We're trying to get ahead of it, right? Because I feel like there's just a lot of reactionary stuff going on.
And what's your advice to the CEOs that are tempted to use fancy industry buzzwords, but don't have any ability to actually articulate what that means beyond pronouncing it?
Yeah.
Saw a couple of those last year, and I don't know about you, I just thought it was so disingenuous, and I lost respect for them because they clearly were trying to show off to an audience that I don't think was buying what they were selling.
Well, and again, that gets back to my comment. It's exactly what I would tell you the feedback is, generally speaking, right? Case studies. Just give us case studies, right? Like the Pillsbury dough business is a good case study embodying everything that General Mills is trying to do, right? They're trying to get their value proposition right with the price points. They are modernizing their marketing and they're improving the product quality. Great. That's measurable. We can see it. We can track it, right? That's what they need to do. They need to provide specific case studies.
We saw a bunch of legacy television ads shown at CAGNY last year. Is that what you would recommend that CEOs showcase in terms of their marketing prowess, or do they need to do things that are more contemporary with TikTok Shop and social commerce and other things like that? Or are we going to just see more and more of the traditional, here's a 30-second ad spot that our AOR, our agency of record, created for us?
Listen, I've been going to CAGNY a long time, right? There was a time where watching the commercials was like the entertainment of CAGNY. Not so much anymore, right? But here's the thing. there's still a place for that. But what I'd like to understand is what is the insight, the societal insight, the consumer behavior insight that is driving this particular ad? Because then that can be more broadly applied to the rest of the company and the rest of the industry, right? Like I'll give you an example. The reason why having too many SKUs in a particular category is now debilitating versus historically, like you go back 20 years, the choice was great, right? Now it's not. It actually limits 80 jams or whatever the category is, and they don't make a decision because they short circuit because of the anxiety, right? So like there's real things going on in the world that I think can be acted upon and then be illustrated through these ads that you're talking about. So I don't think the ads themselves, they don't really bother me. It's like, but you can make it much more of a productive narrative if you provide the insight that's going on behind it. But I would like to see more on the TikTok shop and the social commerce and the reviews and the clinical research and how that's showing up on the FAQ pages and how that's feeding into agentic commerce. Like those are the types of things I think they should talk about more.
So Nik, we've spent about 45 minutes now looking at 2025 in the past and the actions that have existed in place in this calendar year. Let's go spend the rest of this time on this podcast on the future, right? You guys are the deepest in the numbers as Wall Street analysts. If you look at long-term patterns and trends here, are you excited? Are you concerned? Do you have advice? What are 3 or 1 or 2 pieces of insights you would give leadership in CPG today, looking at purely at the numbers?
When I look at, and this is going to sound crazy because, I've been very negative on the space, but when I think about the Imagine work that we did and I think about the future, I just think there's just so much upside. Honestly, I just think there's just so much upside because think about the fact that in an aging population, right? And so much wealth transfer that's going to happen between generations and the focus on health and wellness and longevity and optimizing as we get older, not managing the decline. Like I'm just using one little piece. Just think about the new business models and revenue opportunities that are going to emerge from that, right? Especially as science and technology evolves and we have wearables and we can track and this, and we're going to be able to live better lives and we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay. We're willing to pay up for it, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many people are paying $300 a month to be on a GLP-1 so they can lose weight. And it's not covered by their insurance, but they're just fine doing it, me included. So the thing here is there's just so much opportunity now. Do you have an organization that is equipped to go get it? That's the question.
So let's stay there for a second. Peter tells me he's feeling the greatest wealth transfer coming to him. He's been saying that for a while. He feels rich. But
Shri, we need to talk about issuing that meme coin because I think that's the way we're going to transfer wealth to our next generation.
Absolutely. It's got to be crypto.
It's a crypto meme coin, yeah.
We're just kidding here, guys. But Nik, so greatest transfer of wealth, definitely it's been noted now for 6 months. With the big, beautiful bill, a lot of that was already put into play, right? We're all beneficiaries of it. Give me one big insight in the numbers in consumption that either excites you or concerns you.
Well, what excites me is categories that you never thought would ever grow again are growing.
Can you give us some examples?
I'll go back to Pillsbury, right?
So dough.
Yeah, it's growing.
Baking. Everyday baking.
Yeah. The industry leader decided to lead, got the price points where they needed to be, improve the product, and modernize the marketing. Okay.
You said something important about Pillsbury, though. Was it all of that, or was it all of that with the cultural influencer thing about Pillsbury becoming a person?
I think it was all three. All three had to happen at the same time. It's like
a perfect storm.
Take Busch Light or from Anheuser-Busch, right? They had a value proposition. It was a cheaper beer relative to the rest of the category. They launched Busch Light Apple, right? That went viral. They leaned into it, or social influencers leaned into it. Boom. We know what the formula is, right? And so what excites me is when I see it work, when executed, right? That's what excites me. What worries me is, are the companies willing to have the courage to make some of these tough choices that General Mills made? Cutting numbers is never easy to go to your board and say, guys, we got to cut price on 65% of our portfolio or whatever, probably higher than that. These are not easy things to do, right?
And then tell me one thing that scares you or concerns you. Scare is not the right word here.
What concerns me is the income bifurcation. I've said this for the last 10 years because it's been going on for 40 years. I am really worried about the rich getting richer, the poor getting poor, because what ends up happening is society starts becoming unsafe, right? Because you get some very desperate individuals. And so you see that
people build walls to protect their community and what they've amassed, and that doesn't help create harmony in a society.
Correct. Like, look at Johannesburg. It's one of the most dangerous places to be in the world, but the Gini coefficient, or the income bifurcation, is one of the most severe in the world, right? And I can just tell you, like, in the area I live, there's a Short Hills Mall, which is one of the highest per capita malls in the U.S., and there are carjackings now during Christmas. It's not like that never was the case a couple of years ago, right? And so, like, this is what I worry. I know this is not maybe that directly applied to CPG, but this is really what I worry about, like, for my kids, is this income bifurcation. You know, it's tough on society.
We're so grateful for that, and we look forward to seeing you at no fewer than about 12 industry events in the first quarter of next year, first half of next year, starting with CES, going to NRF, FMI, and Shop Talk, and SOCOM Live, eTail West. There are a couple others I'm sure I'm forgetting, but it's going to be pretty busy. Nik, we're very grateful that you took time out of your vacation prep to sit down and talk to us about the coming year. We're also looking forward to getting together with you at CAGNY. I hope you'll give us some time while we're there to sit down and give us your initial thoughts of what you hear on the dais coming out of the CEOs. And I will say that they would be wise to listen to this episode to help ensure that they have a successful appearance at CAGNY. So Nik, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'll be at FMI. I'll be speaking there as well. So maybe I'll see you there.
Nik, we're looking forward to seeing you at FMI. Shri and I will both be there out in Chula Vista at the new Gaylord Resort. It should be fun. I'm going to be just up the road in La Jolla over Christmas, so I'll have to scope the neighborhood out and see what we got there. Shri's already been there. He was at an event this year. So thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me, guys.
Barrage, as always, we're rounding out 2025. 2025, our fifth year in the industry, Shri, doing this podcast.
550 episodes plus.
Should we do it another year? Should we up this another? Do one more?
No greater way to wrap the year than talk to Nik and get a summary of the year and what's exciting. CAGNY on the horizon. We'll be together at FMI. I'm really looking forward to it. 150 plus episodes. This is not what you and I started it for, but I can't believe that we've gotten this far and we've got the following that we have. Let's thank everybody over 2025 for joining our followership, sending us DMs, sponsoring our episodes, sponsoring parties of ours, sponsoring dinners with us. And Peter, let's ask Nik the magic question. Are Peter and Shri, the CPG guys, legitimate corporate influencers at this point?
I think so, guys. I think so.
There you have it, Shri.
The man said it himself.
With that,
we need to wrap it up before there's another word. Sold.
All right, everybody.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everyone.
And we look forward to seeing you in 2026 on, wait for it, the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.